I'm 84 years old now. My wife died 7 years ago, and we hadn't had a real conversation in more than a decade before that. I don't mean we didn't speak. We did. We talked about groceries, about the thermostat, about whether the lawn needed mowing. We said good morning and good night. We existed in the same house for 53 years, but somewhere along the way she stopped talking to me, and I didn't notice until it was far too late to matter. I'm telling you this because I finally understand why, and because understanding it now, when she's been gone for 7 years, and I'm closer to joining her than not, feels like the cruelest joke time ever played on me. Her name was Marion. We married in 1965. I was 23. She was 21. I worked as an industrial engineer at a manufacturing plant outside Cleveland. She was a secretary at the same plant, which is how we met. People don't meet that way anymore, I know. Everything's different now. For the first 10, maybe 15 years, we talked about everything. She'd tell me about her day, about the other secretaries, about a book she was reading. I'd tell her about problems at work, about the guys I worked with, about ideas I had for improving production lines. We'd sit at the kitchen table after dinner and just talk, sometimes for an hour or more. I don't remember when that stopped. That's the terrible part. There was no single moment. It dissolved so slowly I didn't see it happening. What I do remember is that I got very good at my job. By the mid-70s, I was senior engineer, then lead engineer, then department head. More responsibility, more problems to solve. I'd come home with my head still full of work, and Marion would start telling me something, and I'd be half listening while mentally working through a production issue or a personnel problem. She'd say, "Are you listening?" And I'd say, "Yes, of course," and repeat back the last few words she'd said to prove it. But I wasn't listening. Not really. I was waiting for her to finish so I could get back to thinking about work, or so I could tell her about my day, about the thing that was occupying my mind. I think I believed my problems were more urgent, more important. I was supporting us after all. I was the one under pressure. Let me tell you about a man named Dennis. He worked under me for 18 years, from 1977 to 1995. Good worker, reliable, quiet guy, had a wife named Paula and 2 daughters. We'd talk sometimes during breaks, nothing deep, just the usual shop talk and complaining about management above me. One Monday in April of 1995, Dennis didn't come to work, called in sick. Then sick again Tuesday. Wednesday his wife Paula called and said he'd had a heart attack over the weekend. He was 51 years old. Survived it, but barely. I visited him in the hospital about a week later. He looked grey, 20 years older than he had the previous Friday. We talked for a bit, and then he said something I didn't understand at the time. He said, "Paula told me yesterday that she's been trying to talk to me about her mother's declining health for 6 months. And I never once asked a follow-up question. I thought I was listening. I wasn't." He started crying, right there in the hospital bed. This 51-year-old man who'd just survived a heart attack, crying about not listening to his wife. I remember thinking, well, he's emotional because of the heart attack. The medication probably. The shock of it. I didn't think it had anything to do with me. Dennis came back to work 3 months later. Different man, left at 4:30 every single day, no matter what. Used to stay late regularly before that. Stopped volunteering for overtime. I was annoyed at first. Thought he'd lost his work ethic. But he stayed until retirement at 63. And as far as I know, he and Paula are still together. They're in their early 80s now, same as me. I didn't learn what I should have learned from Dennis. Marion and I had one son, Joel, born in 1968. When he was young, Marion would tell me about his day, about something funny he said, about a problem at school. I'd listen, sort of, but I was always doing something else. Reading the paper, watching TV, thinking about work. I'd nod and make sounds that indicated I was paying attention. That's nice. By the time Joel was in high school, in the early 80s, Marion stopped telling me these things. She'd talk to Joel directly, or she'd talk to her sister Linda on the phone, but she stopped offering me those details of his life. I thought that was just natural. Teenagers are more independent. There's less to report. What I didn't understand was that I'd trained her, over years, that I wasn't interested, or that I was too busy, or that my attention was always elsewhere. So she stopped trying. Joel's 57 now. Lives in Oregon with his second wife. We talk maybe once a month, brief calls. He's polite but distant. We don't have much to say to each other. I think he learned from Marion that I'm not someone you talk to. Not really. I'm someone you give information to, surface level, and then you move on. There was a woman who lived 3 houses down from us for 24 years, from 1981 to 2005. Her name was Vivian. She and her husband Robert had moved in around the same time as a younger couple on our block. Marion became friendly with Vivian. They'd have coffee sometimes, talk in the yard. In 2004, Robert retired. I remember because it was right around when I retired too, and Marion mentioned it. Said Robert was excited to finally have time with Vivian, to travel, to do all the things they'd put off. Less than a year later, Vivian moved out. Just like that. Filed for divorce at 66 years old, after 41 years of marriage. Marion told me about it one evening. We were in the living room, her reading a magazine, me watching the news with the volume low. She said, "Vivian left Robert." I said, "Ha, that's too bad." She said, "She told me she realized she'd rather be alone than spend every day with someone who doesn't see her." I said, "Well, that's sad," and went back to the news. I didn't think about myself. I didn't think about us. I thought about Robert, and I thought, well, there must have been more to it. Affairs, money problems, something serious, not just not being seen. That seemed like therapy talk, like the kind of thing people say when they don't want to admit the real reason. Robert moved away about 6 months later. I heard he died in 2011. Don't know if Vivian ever regretted it, but Marion mentioned once, around 2008 or so, that Vivian had told her she felt like she'd gotten her life back. She was 70 years old at the time. Around 2006, maybe 2007, I started noticing that Marion was quieter than usual. We were both retired by then, both home most of the time, and I expected we'd talk more, but we didn't. We'd sit in the same room and barely say a word. I'd ask her what she wanted for dinner. She'd answer. I'd tell her something I'd heard on the news. She'd nod. That was about it. I thought maybe she was depressed. I suggested once that she see a doctor, maybe talk to someone. She just looked at me for a long moment and said, "I'm fine." In 2010, Marion's sister Linda died. Cancer. It was fast, only 4 months from diagnosis to death. Linda was 65. Marion was devastated. The night of the funeral, we came home and Marion sat at the kitchen table and didn't move for an hour, just sat there, staring at nothing. I didn't know what to do, so I made tea, put a cup in front of her, sat down across from her. She said Linda and I talked every week for 40 years. Every single week. She knew everything about my life. I said, "I know, you two were close." She said she was the only person who really listened to me. It should have hit me then. It should have broken me open. Right there. But it didn't. I thought she meant Linda was the only one who understood sister things, woman things, the specific things they talked about that I wouldn't understand anyway. I didn't think she meant I didn't listen. Or maybe I did know, somewhere deep down, and I just didn't want to look at it. Marion got sick in early 2017. Ovarian cancer. She was 73. It had already spread by the time they found it. They gave her a year, maybe 18 months, with treatment. She chose treatment, but it didn't go well. She was tired all the time, in pain, fading fast. One afternoon in August of 2017, I was sitting beside her hospital bed at home. Hospice had set it up in the living room so she could look out the window at the yard. She was awake, but barely. I was reading the paper. She said, I tried for so long. I put the paper down. What do you mean? She said, to get you to hear me. My stomach dropped. Just completely dropped. I said, I heard you. I always heard you. She closed her eyes. She said, no, you didn't. I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend myself, to list all the conversations we'd had, all the years we'd spent together. But sitting there, looking at her in that bed, dying at 73 years old, I couldn't say any of it. Because she was right. She died 6 days later. I was holding her hand. Her last words to me were, take care of yourself. Practical to the end. That's what we'd become. Practical. I've spent the last 7 years thinking about it. About all the times she tried to tell me something, and I wasn't really there. About how I thought I was listening because I could repeat her words back to her. But I wasn't engaging. I wasn't asking questions. I wasn't curious about her thoughts, her feelings, her internal life. I thought marriage was about coexistence, about being faithful, providing, showing up, and I did those things. I never cheated. I brought home a paycheck for 40 years. I was there, but I wasn't present. There's a difference. And I didn't know it until it was too late. The thing you can't get back is time when someone is still alive and available and trying. Marion tried for years, maybe decades, and I didn't meet her halfway. I didn't even know there was a halfway to meet. By the time I understood, she was dying. And even then, I only understood because she finally said it directly, with the last energy she had left. She used her dying breath to tell me I hadn't listened. You can't fix that. You can't go back and have the conversations you didn't have. You can't relive the evenings where she was trying to connect and you were thinking about work, or watching TV, or just mentally absent. You can't undo the slow accumulation of all those moments where she reached out and you didn't reach back. I thought I had time. I thought we'd grow old together, and eventually I'd slow down and we'd talk more. I thought retirement would be the time for that. But by the time we retired, she'd already given up. The habit of not talking to me was so deeply ingrained that she couldn't break it even when we had all the time in the world. Or maybe she didn't want to anymore. Maybe I'd used up all her attempts. I know some of you are younger, maybe married, maybe in relationships. I don't want to preach at you. I don't think that's my place. But I'll tell you what I wish I'd understood when I was 40, or 50, or even 60. If I could go back, I would put the paper down. I would turn off the TV. I would stop thinking about work the moment I walked through the door. Not because it's the right thing to do in some abstract moral sense, but because the person in front of you will not wait forever. What I didn't understand was that listening isn't just hearing words. It's not repeating back what someone said. It's asking what they mean. It's being curious about their experience. It's making them feel like what they're saying matters to you, because they matter to you. I also didn't understand that silence is a response. When Marion stopped talking to me, that was her answer to years of me not really listening. She didn't leave like Vivian left Robert. She stayed, but part of her left anyway, and I didn't notice until it was too late. If I could go back, I would notice. I would see the change happening, and I would ask about it. I would say, you seem quieter lately. What's going on? But I didn't. I let the silence settle like dust, and eventually, it was just the way things were. One more thing. I didn't understand that you can be lonely in a marriage. You can live with someone for 53 years and be profoundly alone. I think Marion was alone for a long time, even though I was right there. And I was alone too, but I didn't know it because I was so busy, so preoccupied, so certain that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. It's a particular kind of loneliness, the kind where you're not alone, but you're not connected either. We were two people, sharing a house, sharing a life on paper, but not really sharing ourselves. I'm 84 now. I've been alone in this house for 7 years. Really alone this time. No one else here at all. And it feels about the same as it did when Marion was alive, which tells you everything you need to know. I don't have much time left. I'm in decent health for my age, but I'm not kidding myself. Maybe a few more years if I'm lucky. And I'll spend them knowing that I had something precious and I didn't take care of it. I let it erode so slowly, I didn't see it happening. And then it was gone. There are a few books that help me understand this, though I read them too late. One is called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by John Gottman. Another is Hold Me Tight by Sue Johnson. The last one is Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel. They all say versions of the same thing, which is that connection requires attention. Constant, daily attention. I didn't know that. I thought connection was automatic, that it just existed because we were married. If this meant something to you, I'm glad I told you. I don't know if it helps. I don't know if anyone hears this and changes anything. But I needed to say it while I still can. You can leave a thought if you're willing. And there are more stories like this on this channel, from people like me, who figured things out too late, and want to tell you about it before you make the same mistakes. I think about Marion every day. I wonder what we could have had if I'd been present, if I'd really listened. If I'd treated our conversations like they mattered as much as my work, or the news, or whatever else I thought was so important at the time. I'll never know. That's what I live with now. The not knowing, the certainty that it could have been different, and the knowledge that it's too late to make it different. I'm 84 years old. My wife stopped talking to me years before she died, and I finally understand why. I just wish I'd understood it when it could have mattered.